Well, I'm going to share one of my worldly favorite stories of all time. It's not my story, but it's a story, if you're a history buff, you'll know this one very well. And this story is a true story, and it took place 100 years ago this week. So the year was 1914, and World War I, at this time of year, had been waging now brutally for 5 months. And according to some of the sources that I saw, at this point in time, about 1 million people had been killed. So 5 months into World War I. And then something remarkable happened, and this story is referred to as the Christmas Day Truce. And I think this is a story that I will reflect on for the rest of my life, just because it's just so incredible. So let me read you a bit about this story, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts about it. The Christmas Day Truce was a series of widespread but unofficial ceasefires along the Western Front in the week of Christmas, 1914. In the week leading up to the holiday, German and British soldiers crossed trenches to exchange seasonal greetings and talk. In areas, men from both sides ventured into what they called no man's land on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day to mingle and exchange food and souvenirs. There were joint burial ceremonies and prisoner swaps, while several meetings ended in carol singing. Men played games of football with one another, giving one of the most enduring images of the truce. However, the peaceful behavior was not ubiquitous. Fighting continued in some sections, while in others the sides settled on little more than arrangements to recover bodies. The following year, a few units arranged ceasefires, but the truces were not nearly as widespread as in 1914. This was in part due to strongly worded orders from the high commands of both sides prohibiting fraternization. Soldiers were no longer amenable to the truce by 1916. And the reason for that is the war had become increasingly bitter after devastating human losses suffered during the battles of the Somme and the Verdun, and the incorporation of poison gas. The truces were not unique to the Christmas period and reflected a growing mood of live and let live, where infantry in close proximity would stop overtly aggressive behavior and often engage in small-scale fraternization, engaging in conversation or bartering for cigarettes. In some sectors, there would be occasional ceasefires to allow soldiers to go between the lines and recover wounded or dead comrades, while in others, there would be tacit agreement not to shoot while men rested, exercised, or worked in full view of the enemy. The Christmas truces were particularly significant due to the number of men involved and the level of their participation. Even in very peaceful sectors, dozens of men openly congregating in daylight was remarkable, and are often seen as a symbolic movement of peace and humanity amidst one of the most violent events of human history. So when I'm thinking about this, of course, now we don't have anyone to ask, did this really happen? But enough of research has been done with people looking at diaries and things that have been written by people where it really did happen. There's no question about it. There's just too many diaries that talk about this. And I just can imagine, these guys, apparently it all started with the German side singing Silent Night. And then the British people and everyone else who knew the melody joined in. This was on Christmas Eve. And just what an incredible thing that must have been, to hear that melody, first of all. And you're in the trench. It's probably filled with mud. It's Christmas. It's probably snowing. You're freezing. And in some cases, these trenches were like 60 yards apart. That's just nothing. And so what really throws me with this whole thing is that prior to that truce happening, the mind of the person who had the gun or the grenade, the minute you would see the shape of a helmet, just the shape of a helmet or the color of a uniform, that was the enemy, and you pulled the trigger. That's it, right? That's the enemy. That's all you needed, that moment of recognition. And a lot of these guys are just boys. Lots of people lied to get into the war. And they lied for reasons that are just all over the map. You know, they were dreamers. They had no clue what they were getting into. They had no clue about the hell realm they were going to get into. In World War I, this is hand-to-hand combat a lot. But then all of a sudden, the mind can flip. And the person wearing that different shaped helmet, you walk out and you shake hands, and you exchange chocolates, apparently, and drinks, and it just gets me. So we're not carrying a gun, and we're not looking at a uniform, although we might. But we might look at skin color. We might look at just the person who insulted us, and immediately we throw that label on of enemy, and our mind is inflamed, and then our mind just runs with it. And, we see now in this country, if there's a gun at hand, it gets used. So what's very interesting is that from that point on, so there was apparently 48 hours of people just getting together and celebrating over this Christmas period. And then they decided it was over. And back they go into the trenches. And they continue murdering each other for the next 4 years. So that from Christmas of 1914 until the war ended, the Great War ended in June of 1918, approximately 16.5 million people died. That's military and civilian deaths. About 20 million people were wounded. And so you can see that the casualties in the First World War is 35 million plus. And yet, during that time of the truce, it all could have stopped. I mean, look at the ridiculousness of the war. You can have people climbing out of the trenches, and I know they're not representing the people who made these decisions. They're just young boys, on a mission. But they climbed out of those trenches and saw, there's another human being, just like me. Okay, so I think what we can do is keep this story in mind, and if we can catch it soon enough, the minute that this mind that flags enemy or disagreeable person, or I'm fed up with that behavior, or I wish you'd take off. Just think, there's my mind going. That person is doing what they're doing. That person is loved by many other people. That person does a huge number of great positive things. That person is probably working on their mind. And I'm so deluded, I can't even see it. So, for the sake of all sentient beings, which is a phrase we use a lot here, let's bring that story to mind. And let's hope that in time, when more and more people have the skills to work on their mind, that war will be in the past tense. War will have ceased forever.